today we have the honor of speaking with Marisa Murgatroyd. How you doing today, Marisa?
I am doing good. Thank you.
Thank you so much for carving out the time to be here. I'm so excited to chat with you today because I really want to ask you, what is your story?
Ah, I've got a lot of them. But a lot of times people want to know the story of how I got into entrepreneurship, or you're more interested in the story of how I created my first program.
I'm actually interested in the story of your life, starting from the very beginning.
All right. Well, I was a small baby and I'm still 4'11" and a quarter inches tall, right? So I'm
Wow.
still small. But the really interesting thing is, I like to say, if we're going to go back that far, is I was essentially a planned child. What that meant is I was born in a planned community. And the day I was born, my father had a big plan for me. Basically, that I was going to go to a well-respected college and then, get a job at a well-respected institution. And he had all these plans for me. But the only problem was that the plan did not include me. He left something very important out of that plan. See, my dad is a macroeconomic advisor. He restructures financial systems for a living. So he had this formula in his mind's eye that if he puts in, this plus this, out at the end of it was going to become a happy and successful daughter.
Mhm.
But the problem was he didn't account for who I was and what I really cared about and what, I wanted to do with my life. So a lot of the things that he tried to steer me on the path towards weren't the things that I really loved to do. He wanted me to be a lawyer or a journalist, have one of these professional fields, and I kind of turned out an artist, much to his disappointments, let's say. But of course, it's those skills that have made me a highly successful entrepreneur at the end of the day. And so I remember it's always been a little bit of a push pull. It felt like he had this path laid down before me, and it wasn't one of those dirt paths. It was like laid down with concrete. And as a girl and as a teenager, it felt like trying to shift this path was virtually impossible. And every time I had the courage to just, push my shoots out through the cement, it's like he took these little pruning scissors and cut the prunes and said, no, no, go back this way, be this kind of professional. So I kind of feel like it took me years, decades really, to realize that what I wanted and who I was valid, and it was okay. And it was something that I could pursue in the world. My gifts and dreams were important. And so that's been the longer process of discovery for me, is to recognize that, what I want is valid. And it's taken many, many years. Like, I didn't start entrepreneurship until I was in my 30s. And, in this age, you look like you're a millennial, that you're already like dated at this time, right? You're past your prime in your 30s, some people believe. I don't really believe that's the case, because I've got students who are anywhere from in their 20s to I've got some students in their 80s.
Wow. So, jumping back to when you were growing up, I'm curious to learn more about it seems like there's always this tension, right? Of the concrete path and of what you really wanted to do and who you really are.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. Maybe it wasn't the exact same situation, but maybe it's just societal uh, pathway of you go to school, you get a job, you do this, you do that. So how did you listen to that internal that internal core message, or like who you were at your core? How did you dig into that? How did you tap into that and figure out what it actually was?
It took going through a few wrong careers to find the right one. And that kind of brings me to another story, which is the day that I realized that the career that I was in was the wrong career. So I was actually a documentary film director. And unlike a lot of struggling filmmakers, I was actually being paid to produce and direct documentary films by a production company. And I remember being, in my office editing a film, trying to get it output to DVD. And at this point, this is output to thousands of DVDs. So it was kind of like a high pressure, high important moment in time. And my boss walks in, sometime at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And she says, can I borrow your power cord? Like, I left mine at home. I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't have this plugged in. I'm going to run out of juice and we've got to hit this production deadline. And she said, well, Marisa, That computer you're working on, I own that computer, and that power cord, I own that power cord too. So give me the power. What she didn't say, but what I heard is, Marisa, I pretty much own you. And we got into it. We had an argument, and eventually I gave her the power cord. And when I did, I felt like I was ultimately giving away my power. I realized that I had spent 3 years building this woman's company. I'd spent 3 years creating a documentary film series that she owned. I had no intellectual property. I had no royalties, no residuals. I was being paid $1,000 a week for my creativity and my talents. And that was it. If I didn't work, I didn't get paid. I wasn't even an employee. I didn't get vacation pay, time off, any of that. And so I realized that, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Even though I love the work, I didn't love the job, and I definitely didn't love the boss. So I started to think about, well, what do I even know how to do? What else could I do? And the only thing I thought of is, well, I know how to make things look good and sound good and tell a damn good story, but who's going to pay me for that? Because as a filmmaker, as an artist, I didn't think that those skills had a whole lot of value because they hadn't so far. But in a completely different context, those same skills were the basis of all business and marketing. And they were incredibly valuable and would end up, helping me create a mid-7-figure company in a matter of years. But I didn't know. And when I was looking at it, I was like, well, where could I even try to explore working? And I thought, well, maybe somewhere at the intersection of the internet and entrepreneurship, because filmmaking is slow, the internet moves fast, and I'm an impatient, patient person that likes to see things happen fast. So let's try the internet because it's fast. And from there, I just started exploring and being like, wow, I'm actually really good at this. And it shocked me, being an artist, that I was good at business, and that I was good at marketing, and that I was good at making money. It was a shocker of the century. It was also a shocker for my entire family, who thought I was going to be broke forever, right?
Wow. So when you made that decision of, this person just does not respect my talents, they don't respect me as as an employee, as an individual, over the power cord incident, when you made that decision, how did that actually feel in that moment? Because I feel like a lot of people, um, they're scared,
Yeah.
and they don't know what it's like on the other side of that decision.
Well, it was certainly scary. And it was also exciting, in that all of a sudden I saw a new possibility for myself, a new potential future that had not even been on my radar before. But certainly I had no idea. Like, there's a lot of questions of, how am I going to make money? Like, what could I actually sell? What would people pay me for? How's this going to work? And I call that the how hole. And I always tell my students, my clients, my customers, you got to avoid the how hole. You've got to first have that compelling vision of what and why. And then the how kind of works itself out once you get that main clarity. But many people start with the how, and then you've got a million questions that you can't answer. And it feels like the, leap is just too big.
Wow. So I want to continue with the narrative, but I want to take a step back first, because I think there's a little more that we should dig into here, as far as really getting in touch with those skills as a storyteller, those skills of being able to make things look good, and really being able to create. How did you identify those skills within yourself? How did you know that you were an artist, a creator?
Well, it's what I've always done, and I'd been a documentary filmmaker for 3 years. And so that's all I did: make things look good and sound good and tell good stories. And honestly, that felt like desperation, just being like, oh, I can make things look good and sound good and tell good stories. It seems so basic that it was almost like a non-skill. And I really believe that people are like fish in water. You can't see, fish don't know that they're in water, right? You can't
Right.
see your talents. You can't see the value of the talents. So it's what I've always done. Like, I live to express myself and to create. And I've done that since I was a small girl all the way up till today. I do it every single day of my life. But thinking that that had value was the real question.
Mm. So when was that fundamental shift? When did you realize, this is the value?
I don't think I realized it until people started paying me a lot of money for it, to be honest. It took that, like, a cold, hard cash, the evidence, for me to really believe it.
So did you just kind of default to, okay, now I'm on my own. I've made this decision to leave this, power cord bad situation, and just explore. And then did you just default to what you knew how to do, and then you just kind of built from there? Like, how did that actually work?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I figured out one particular context I could give my gifts, which was branding and web design. And I started selling $3,000 to $5,000 branding and web design packages. And, a lot of people needed websites, so it wasn't that hard of a sell. But these days we have $50,000 branding and web design packages. So I'm kind of amazed at how much I gave back then, how much I poured into each of these. And that $5,000 felt like so much money, but I started doing that and I just started experimenting with that. And gradually that evolved and it evolved and it evolved. I always tell my students to make a get started choice. Like everybody wants to make the right choice. They want to make a forever choice, but you just got to get started by making a choice and starting to do something. And we still do branding and web design, but 80% of our revenue comes from online education, courses, programs, training, mentorship, coaching.
I love what you said about just make a choice and just get started, because I feel like the power of that is that you get to start building momentum. And even if you're not doing the thing that you want to do forever, like your forever path or your forever career, at least you figure out, like you may figure out something you don't want to do. And to me, that's very useful too. That's very, very useful, because you can check that one off the list and put it on the, I don't want to do this. Now I know that. So you don't have to ever go back and re-explore
Very
it.
useful. Plus, I don't think there's any such thing as forever choices anymore because things are always changing. The world is changing. Your, market expectations are changing. Technology is changing. And most of all, you are changing. So the moment you think you've got a forever choice, is it really forever? And recently, I've actually started to think about what I want 10 years in the future. And I've never been able to do this before. Like, I can think about a year in the future, maybe 2, maybe 3, 10 years is like, whoa, I mean, there's no cars anymore. We're living on Mars. I don't know. It's like, I can't imagine what my business and my life is going to be 10 years in the future. But when I really started to ask, do I want to be running this business at the level of intensity that I'm currently running it 10 years in the future? The answer was not necessarily no, but not necessarily yes either. The answer was that I want the freedom to choose whether I want to be doing it or not. So I actually have to start creating a sellable asset. I have to start building Live Your Message into like a peak potentials where we have lots of trainers and facilitators who are delivering my work. And then I have the option as to whether I want to deliver it or not. I have the option as to whether I want to take the stage or take the mic, or maybe not. Or maybe I take the stage and mic at very special opportunities and let people do it the rest of the time. Because the truth is, what I know about myself is I'm a dyed-in-the-wool creator. So what gets me up every day, what gets me super excited is creating something new. And of course, sometimes optimizing what already exists. But once I've delivered something, a handful of times, and I'm going on delivering my annual live event for the 8th year, and that's a lot. Then it's like, do I really need to keep delivering this over and over again? Because I'm not the star personality where I just thrive on getting on stage or in camera in front of the mic, where just that, I'm like, yay! I actually thrive on creating something new. So for me to liberate myself to my truest calling and my truest genius zone, I might have to let go and let other people deliver some of the things that I've created in the past that are still working fine. Like I've got it to the final state. I've got it as good as it possibly could be. But now let me pass it on to somebody else to deliver this or train this or teach this and allow me to go and create something new. So part of that is that self-recognition of what do I really want? And like I said, I've never been able to look 10 years in the future before, but I just reached a point of burnout earlier this year where I had to start looking at what do I really want and what do I don't want? And what is my life going to look like beyond what my business looks like?
I love that. You literally like read my mind. I was literally going to ask you those questions of, uh, like, what do you really want to do? At this point, like, what does the future look like? And to me, that's so interesting of recognizing that about yourself, that, you'd prefer to go, I believe I heard you said you'd like to go create something new instead of just giving the same thing over and over and over and over again just to be on the stage.
Yeah.
And That to me is fascinating. So it seems like it takes a lot of self-awareness, and I believe you used the term self-recognition, to understand that about yourself and to just know that, and to be able to like work on the things that you really want to work on.
Yeah.
How did you get to that? How did you get that self-awareness?
I'm making a fuck ton of mistakes. I hope this is PG friendly show.
All good.
But there's
Let it
no other way
fly.
to say it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, like the more I try to fit myself into boxes that they're not a box that I fit into, or the more that I try to corral myself into doing this thing because I think that I have to, and the more that I start being unhappy in certain areas, and then noticing how I'm feeling every single day when I wake up. We just had a team retreat. We had about, I think, 20 of our teammates come to our house here in Topanga Canyon, California. And we actually did basically personality mapping of the entire team, where the entire team took a series of assessments, took the Colby, took wealth dynamics, human design, love languages, Enneagram, Myers-Briggs. And then we actually did these exercises where you could see where everybody was and all these different factors. And it gave all of us a ton of self-awareness, where we started to recognize why everyone was brilliant in the way that they were brilliant, and, crazy as a bat in the way that they're crazy, right? So we could all understand each other's genius and our psychosis and everything else, and recognizing that, the strengths also have shadows. I always say that every bright light casts an even bigger shadow. And just developing that self-awareness that there are certain things I'm never going to do in this lifetime. I'm never going to be able to play music. I have no musical ability whatsoever. I'm never going to learn Thai. My mom's from Thailand, and it's a phonetic language, and I'm not a phonetic, a tonal language, and having no musical ability means it's very, very hard to hear the difference between ba and ba and ba, whatever it is, like, I don't know. And so there's certain things that I've just got to let go of because they're outside of my zone of genius, but it's incredibly empowering because there's a book that I love. And I'm a bit of a nerd and a bookworm and things like that. And it's
Me too. Power to the nerds.
Fantastic. The nerds rule the world in this day and age.
Yeah, we do.
So it's a story by kind of an Eastern European writer named Isles Akinger called The Bound Man. And Franz Kafka was obsessed with this story and kind of read this quote, which is, to have the feeling of being bound and at the same time the other, yet to know if one were unbound, it would be far worse. So let me give you the context of what that means. Basically, the bound man is a circus performer, someone who wakes up covered in ropes and all of a sudden discovers an incredible agility, right? This major agility in ropes. And so people come from miles and miles around to see this performer in ropes. But eventually the performer's like, I'm tired of being in these ropes. And he goes down to the river with a knife in his teeth and cuts off all of his ropes and instantly lost all its agility. So it's the ropes and it's the constraints that actually gave him agility and gave him grace and gave him beauty and allowed him to do something that everybody would come from miles to see. And so often we get tired of our own constraints or in our own boundaries, but it's embracing those constraints that actually creates massive freedom and agility. Like brainstorming, for example, as a creative, my ability to kind of brainstorm and generate ideas, that works best within constraints, whether it's time constraints or block time, or whether it's like actually focusing my mind on solving a very specific problem versus looking at a blank page. And one of my expertise is developing frameworks to help people ideate and create messaging for their businesses, for example, or create products. It's like frameworking the process because creativity shines in constraint. And I think so often we try to, we believe that freedom means complete, unshackled, potential. And it's just never the case. And so I think it's just embracing the edges and embracing the boundaries and embracing the things that we'll never do and that we suck at that actually allows us to shine.
How do you pick the right constraints to like bounce off of, to use as that force to then work from and kind of use as like the ideal counter?
Well, it depends on the scenario, right? But if we look at it just from a general standpoint in life and what you do with your talents and skills and expertise, you were born with the right constraints. If that makes sense, basically. You were born with things that you're great at and things that you suck at. And the path of life is accepting what you're great at and what you suck at. I teach people how to find their superpower. It's one of the things that I teach, which is the underlying gift that underlies everything that you do that's only you can do. It's not, a lot of people mistake the secondary skills they've developed to support their gift as the true gift, but it's not. So a lot of times people have what I call superpower envy. They want somebody else's superpower. And they're like, oh, well, this person's superpower is much more interesting than mine. Why can't I have theirs? But you were born with precisely the right gifts and precisely the right constraints. And the path to real success in life is simply accepting that.
I think it was Emerson that said something similar of once you accept who you really are and just very clearly recognize like your strengths and your weaknesses, almost exactly the sentiment here, then it's like, okay, I found it, I can recognize it, and I can then start working from a place of understanding what I'm actually good at and what I'm not good at. I'm curious though, how do you know, or how can you know, because I feel like we're multifaceted beings, so like we're good at multiple things. So how can you identify like what your one superpower is versus something else you may be really good at, but it's not
Yeah.
like your main superpower?
Well, I will say I have a 6-week program on doing it. So there's a series of lenses, about 10 different exercises to go through, because each one, there might be one that gets you there. Each one validates the next. Everything from looking at your past to doing, personality assessments, to talking to people in your family or potential clients, to writing your story, there's so many different lenses to look at it. But my gift, my core superpower, just to give you an example, when I first started, when I was looking at, well, what could I do? I figured out that I know how to make things look good, sound good, and tell a damn good story. Now, really what that's about, it's not just about making things look good and sound good and telling stories. The real gift is actually being able to translate essence into form. So I can take the essence of who someone is, say in our branding agency or our web design agency, and turn it into form, which is often written word. It's often images and graphics and logos. It's often customer experiences, it's product lines, it's strategies, it's marketing, whatever it happens to be. And I can also create training and programs and coaching that helps people discover the essence of who they are. So the thing is when I look at just at words and images, while I'm great at words and images, the real gift is actually being able to translate the essence into form. And now the form can change. So ideally, you want a statement that's a little bit more general like that doesn't pigeonhole you. So if I said my gift is helping people craft incredible messaging, well, that's actually, there's so many other ways in which I help people translate essence into form. So you kind of want the core gift to be context agnostic, like platform agnostic in a way, because that gift can take different forms in the future. So I may do this in the future. Like I've got ideas for creating public art projects, like world-changing projects. I might do this in a fundamentally different way than I'm currently doing it sometime in the future. But as long as I'm exercising this gift, I'm in my zone of genius. And I've got to kind of stay fluid to never think that any one context is going to be the be-all, end-all context for the rest of my life. Because as the world is changing and market expectations changing and technology is changing and I'm changing, I may need a new outlet. Does that make sense?
I think to some extent I understand.
So
But I think,
basically,
but I
sorry, go
think
ahead.
like, I don't think anybody will ever truly understand the full depth of what that actually means to you, because that is your superpower. And like only you've lived through your experiences. And like, you know, I did my very best to listen and try to understand. But I'm just so curious as to what the difference in my understanding and the difference in because you live that every day, and like what does that actually look like for you? Like how does that manifest itself in your everyday life and your thoughts and your life?
Yeah, well, I try to spend the majority of my time translating essence into form. So, for example, looking at the P&L statements, the profit and loss statements for my business is not translating essence into form, and I really do not enjoy it. Managing team members is not transforming essence into form, and I don't always enjoy it. So there's a lot of things in the business that I don't like to do because they don't relate to translating essence into form. Now, I have gotten good at certain skill sets, like getting things done, for example. Marketing, for example, branding, web design, product creation. And some of those relate to translating essence into form, but others allow me to do it, like getting things done. I developed that skill set because without that skill set, I can't translate essence into form. Make sense?
Yeah.
So what it looks like is I spend about half a day every day in block time where I'm creating. And as long as I do that, I'm willing to do the things that are outside of my zone of genius that run the business and make it tick, because I've got my fix of genius zone activities.
That makes so much sense. How often do you like recalibrate or check again and be like, is this still like my area of genius? Has it changed a little bit? How have I changed in relation to that?
Yeah.
Like, how often do you do that, for lack of a better term, recalibration?
Well, my superpower never changes, but the way that I deliver my superpower changes. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So the gift never changes. So I want to help people find the thing that's timeless in what they do, that will never change, that's not a fad, that's been with you your entire life. You just got to dig a little deeper to find that. And then, of course, I do help them figure out what's a current application or context to leverage that gift that's going to be profitable and fulfilling. But try not to hold on to that as a forever idea, because the moment you do, the moment it starts to feel a little static and like a box that you put yourself into. But you can make an agreement, like a commitment, where you reevaluate something every year, every 3 years. I do strategic planning every year. But the bigger picture reevaluations happen when I'm starting to not feel as good, if that makes sense. When I'm feeling less happy, less inspired, less on fire, more tired, more shit's just going wrong, that's when I usually know I'm off, I'm a little bit off and need to recalibrate.
So it seems like you've done a lot of work on yourself and a lot of introspection and like understanding what really makes you tick and what's at your core. But what questions do you have about yourself now?
Questions. Gosh, in terms of the actual questions, I think it's always like, what do I really want? What does success look like? What is my end game here? Right. Where it's a lot of times it's also like, what have I not seen? Where can I still evolve? What are the limiting beliefs or edges that are holding me back? Where am I not aligned or congruent with my purpose, with my message, with my gifts? Where am I being out of integrity? Where in my life am I being an asshole, right? Whatever it happens to be, those are the questions I ask.
That's hilarious. So with the limiting beliefs, and this is so interesting, the timing of this, because I've just been trying to like almost obsessively challenge my beliefs lately. So I'm like, get out of there, limiting belief. So how do you go about identifying them on a recurring basis? I know we've talked about it a little bit, but like how do you go back and tune up and like really dig deeper? And what have been the biggest limiting beliefs that you found thus far?
Yeah. Well, some of it's just feedback that I get from other people, right? Some of it is results that I'm getting in my life or not getting in my life. Some of it comes from working with professionals, coaches, shamans, people who are smarter than I am, who've achieved bigger success than I have. And, some of it's just like tripping on it and falling on my face. Like, oh, there's one, So some of the biggest limiting beliefs that I've come across is a lot of times, like, it's where intellectually I know something to be true, but I don't actually believe it or embrace it yet. That my wiring has me like know that it's true, but fight the truth of it. So for example, I know that who I'm being, who I am, is more valuable. It's inherently valuable, and it's more valuable than anything I could do or produce or achieve.
Right.
And yet, I'm a highly ambitious, highly motivated entrepreneur that's been building an empire, right? And so there's still some piece of me, some like wounded child aspect of me that's overcompensating for love and attention and understanding that I didn't get as a child. And
Mm.
it's so in my core that even though I know it, I still find myself proving or overextending or overcompensating in these different ways.
Mm.
So the belief is the thing that you accept as true. Now, the key word there is accept. It's not know is true. So when you accept something as true, it's like you're accepting it with every cell of your body, that you know it in this visceral, grounded way. And I think that people know a lot that they haven't fully accepted. Like when you really embrace things like, you're as ready as you'll ever be. When you really embrace that, there is no failure, there's only feedback. When you really embrace that, you are not your business, that it may be an expression of you, but it's not who you are. It does not define your worth. When you really embrace that you have all the time you need to do what you want, when you really embrace that you are inherently resourceful, when you really embrace that you have the potential to make an unlimited amount of money and impact, when you really embrace these things and you feel it with every cell of your body, it changes the game. And I start a lot of times with like just pushing the edges. So say I'm going into a launch and I want to make $1.5 million. And that was my goal last year and I hit it. The number of times I've hit our goals for like almost to the dollar or within $1,000 is insane. So I take this number and I don't just say, okay, $1.5 million, we're going to sell 700 units of our product. If I just write that on the board, it doesn't mean a whole lot. But I've got to actually every day feel what it would feel like to sell 700 units and make $1.5 million. I got to believe it. And I remember actually, it was my first $1 million launch. I think we did 1.1 million, where I was like, I'm going to have my first $1 million launch. It was 3 years ago, I think. And things were not looking good. The very first webinar, I freaking blew this webinar. I've never blown a webinar so hard in my life. And I've done hundreds of webinars.
Oh
And I had
no.
900 people on the line. And I made like 50 sales. And it was so bad. People were heckling me in the chat. I don't get heckled. It's because I was like, I'm going to do so well. I'm going to go learn this webinar methodology from the best webinar man in the world. And I'm going to integrate it. And I'm going to try it on my most biggest launch of the year, right? Not a good idea. I've learned, do not try a new kind of webinar in your biggest launch of the year and your biggest webinar of the year, right? But anyway, the lessons that you learn along the way. And usually the $100,000 mistakes are the ones that stick, $100,000 plus mistakes. So anyway, webinar didn't go well. I reach out to my partners like, don't worry, it's not that bad. You still have days and days to recuperate. Now cart close comes and goes, and we're down about $300,000. I think we had done $700,000 at this point. And I was talking to a friend of mine and I said, we still have a reopen. It was going to be, we were going to do a 2-day reopen. And I was like, this is $1 million launch. She's like, what are you going to do? Go out and, hand out flyers on the street, Marisa? And I was like, I don't know, but this is $1 million launch. And two things happened. One is it turned out there was a problem on cart close day with an integration on the order form. So all of the sales that were coming through PayPal were not actually completing the process of selling. So about 10 to 14% of sales were down. So I was all psyched out on the cart close day. Why isn't more sales coming in? What's going on? And it's because about 14% of the sales weren't showing up, right? And I had no idea of knowing that, but I still was like carrying in my gut, this is $1 million launch. This is $1 million launch, whatever it is. And then I think that problem adds an extra $100,000 over the weekend. I'm like, okay, that's sales that were there that I didn't even know were there. So I was psyching myself out on cart close day. Then when it comes to the reopen, we see a 30% lift. Now, the average reopen is a 12 to 13% lift. We added a new payment plan option from a 3-pay to a 9-pay. And all of a sudden, all these people, it was simply a payment plan issue. They all wanted to buy it, but they couldn't afford it on the 3-pay and they needed a better, more favorable terms. So we added that in and they were like, thank you, I'm in. And it's just that the fact that I could have psyched myself out at so many points of the launch, but I believed to the depths of my soul that we were going to do $1 million launch. And nothing was dissuading me, even when the evidence seemed to point to this is not going to happen for you, Marisa. I kept clinging onto it, and I didn't give up until every stone was turned, and I'd done everything I possibly could. And it was a $1.1 million launch, right?
That's amazing.
Yeah. So the belief is the acceptance of something is true. It's not just like, oh yeah, I'm going to make $1 million, or I'm going to have an 8-figure company, or all these goals that people threw out, or I'm going to go from 0 to 10 million in 1 year, which so many entrepreneurs come in like, yeah, I want to make $1 million this year. How much are you making now? 0. But it's such an ungrounded assertion. It's such an ungrounded outcome or goal that they have not embodied that deep knowingness, nor have they embodied the skill and the confidence to get themselves that result. And a lot of times when people come to me with that completely ungrounded sense of what they can do, where I can see that it's a concept up here and it's not a concept that's embodied in the rest of who they are, a lot of times I run, I'm like, it's not going to happen. And the mismatch of their expectations with the reality of what they can currently do is going to create some pain and some suffering. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So my question then is, if we have this very empowering belief of we can earn an unlimited amount of money, and at the same time we have to bring that, well, we have to make it a belief, right? And it can't just be up here, it has to be ever pervasive throughout our being. What's the limit to that ambition? I mean, is it just simply like how far you can get and how much you're willing to pay over how long of a period of time?
It's what you're capable of holding for. So a lot of times, like, if I want to make a $10 million business, obviously, and I do, that's a goal of mine. It's not just for the money. It's because I want the resources and reach to really live my message in the world and achieve my bigger mission and my end game, right? And I have that confidence that it's going to happen. I would like it to happen in 2 years. Maybe it'll happen in 3, but I have that feeling. But it's expanding the capacity to hold for more, because with that $10 million business comes a greater level of team, comes a greater level of judgment, exposure, you name it. So I've got to gradually increase my capacity to hold for all of that. And if I can't, we're not going to get there. That makes sense.
And how do you increase your capacity?
You do it bit by bit by bit by doing things that are outside of your comfort zone. So there's a book called The Rise of Superman, which is a really good book. It's kind of looking at how humans have broken, extreme sport, what do they call it? Like a goal. It's not a goal. It's like the record. Yeah, a record, an extreme sport record, one after the other, in rapid progression. And there's something called the challenge skill ratio, that humans can find a state of flow and be propelled forward when they're about 4% challenged over their current level of skill. But imagine if you do that day after day after day after day, where every day you put yourself 4% or more challenged than your current level of skill. So every single time I've stepped on stage in front of 700 people, or I've done a big launch where I promised the top JV partner $50,000 cash, and I have no idea whether I can afford that or not, or all these different risks that I've taken. It's not that I know how to do that. It's that I set myself up to be in a situation where I am almost forced to expand and grow. And usually I've built the trust and the resilience to know that in those situations, I'm going to expand, right? So a lot of times people have 2 different possible responses to stress or challenge. Either they crumble or they become stronger. So if you can kind of develop up the resilience and the self-trust to know that in those challenge moments, you become stronger, and to associate challenge with growth and with success, you will be able to expand your capacity, your earning capacity, your capacity for impact and influence, your capacity for happiness, abundance, wealth, whatever it is that you want, relationship, you can expand that. But you have to focus on expanding that as you notice your own limits and where either your belief stops you, your level of comfort, your level of skill, your level of just capability, noticing those and just gradually pushing the edges.
So it seems like you set the goal and you orchestrate it to where it's that 4% past what you were doing before, or you challenge yourself 4% more, or and then you set it up to where you almost force yourself to grow by setting it out like future forecasting. Okay, if this is the goal, this is the goal I want to hit. Now I know I have to grow by this much in order to get there. Okay, the pressure's on. Now I have to do it.
Yep. I'm a big fan of, even when I teach people product creation, and that's one of my specialties, is teaching people how to design and market super sticky products that get people hooked on buying from you, taking action, getting results, and ultimately wanting to refer you and buy from you again and again. Once you set, the very first thing that I do in the very first module is first set the amount of minimum target and stretch financial goals. So you have that vision of what you want to achieve. Then create your idea to market blueprint. So you know exactly when you're launching your product, exactly when when you're delivering the project. Then you have to reverse engineer the launch dates. And then you reverse engineer everything leading into those launch dates, right? And, once you have that and you set those goals and you basically never change them. I think I've canceled one launch in my entire history as an entrepreneur, and it was the right move to cancel it. And it was hard for me to cancel it. Could have done it, but at what cost? But most people are like, yeah, okay, let me push that back another week. Let me push that back another week. Let me push that back another week. So there's no integrity into the container that they've set. So they're losing self-trust all the time, saying, when I make a commitment, I don't stick to it. I don't do what it takes to get me ready for that.
That's so harmful, because then you're training yourself to not believe yourself and to not trust that you're going to be able to do.
You're training yourself to, every time I get to the line, every time I get to that moment of transformation, every time I get to the moment where I can change my life for the better and achieve everything that I said that I wanted, I back down.
That's so damaging.
Yeah.
So,
and most people do that all the freaking time.
So there really is no shortcut. There's no secret.
There are shortcuts in the sense that you can learn from people who figured things out, who can give you a pathway, but you still have to do the work. And you're still going to have to make some mistakes. And a lot of the mistakes come from people being stubborn about things needing to be done a certain way that's been unproven and untested and not following the path, right? Like, no, I know a better path, even though I've never made a cent in my life.
That's awesome.
Right.
Well, so that actually, I'm curious, because especially about what you just said about the unproven and untested path, how do we create something new then? Like, I forget the guys who flew the first plane.
Yeah, you iterate your way to awesome. So this is what I teach my students, the difference between the stuck cycle and the iterate your way to awesome cycle. The stuck cycle is where you have an idea, you proceed to overanalyze that idea, which causes you to procrastinate, which leads to nothing. And so your ideas never really grow, right? Or you do the iterate your way to awesome cycle, where you have an idea, you take action on the idea, which gives you more clarity, which gives you more momentum that leads to better ideas, more action, more clarity, and more momentum. So you just got to get out of the stuck cycle into the iterate your way to awesome cycle, and look at your business like a scientist, essentially. So you're playing in the experiment lab of your business. You don't know what's going to work. You don't know what's not going to work. And you just look at it. Oh, that worked. That didn't work. Oops, didn't work. Oops. Oh yeah, great. This one works badass. This is gangbusters, right? And of course, when you have someone who's a mentor and someone who can guide you, they can tell you, well, these 5 things not going to work. This thing works really, really well. And it's going to save you a bunch of trial and error, but still within the thing that works really well, you're going to have your own trial and error, if that makes sense.
Right.
Getting it to work for you.
So when you're working with a mentor or somebody who has already been where you want to go, I'm interested in that, like testing within it's almost like testing within the guidance, right? How do you know what to take literally from them, and how do you kind of discern where you need to iterate and improve and innovate within that guidance?
Yeah. So, there's a difference between taking the spirit of the advice and doing it to the letter. Usually you can't do something to the letter. Like, someone couldn't take my exact marketing campaign and apply it to their business, right? But for example, Jeff Walker, product launch formula, you have these 3 videos. The first one's about the opportunity, right? The second one's the method, and the third one's the blueprint, whatever it is. It's like a general formula that works, right? Now, he's not telling you the content or the specificity to your business, but he's telling you the kind of broad strategy that you then work on for your own business. So I think the mistake people make is trying to look for that magic bullet, that like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And that usually doesn't work, because there's some piece that you've got actually, well, this feels right to me. This is how I would interpret this for my business. And you're still following the advice, the spirit of the advice, but you can't necessarily follow it to the exact letter, because it breaks down. Maybe you live in a different country and, people, like respond differently, right? Maybe your economy is different. And, the pricing structure has to be different. Maybe your level of confidence is different. So you're not good on camera and you can't carry a 40-minute video, right? There's a lot of different factors like that you got to consider. And so you adapt.
So I want to play devil's advocate for a second. And I kind of want to question, based on something I read, again, from Emerson. He was making the point of a lot of the things that we do today, just as people, are based on either laws or things created by people in the past. And we kind of conform, not kind of, we conform to what, society has led, like what society has aggregated over the course of time, instead of just going out and creating something completely new based on what we feel. Because the people who created it way back in the day, they were people too, and they created new then. Why shouldn't we go and create new now? So this idea of iterating and working with mentors and like taking what works and building, why wouldn't we just go and create something completely new from scratch that is just so unique to us, and so authentic, like just such an authentic expression of us, because we have no idea if it was just raw and unfiltered, it could be way better than anything that anybody else has ever created.
I think you might be giving yourself too much credit. So what I mean by this is there are 8 billion people on the planet. There's another school of thought, Hannah Arendt, that nothing you could ever do will be truly original.
Right.
We stand on the shoulders of giants. We are, going to have, and we want to. Like if you had to go back and be like, electricity no longer exists. Okay. Not going to happen. Like even the very tools you use were created by other people. The house you live in was probably created by somebody else. The internet was created by somebody else. To think that you're going to be able to do something that's truly unique, that is not informed or influenced by anybody, is kind of like sociopathic, to be honest, right? It's a denial of any form of influence or social, architecture in our lives as humans. And that's just not even possible. So, but there's a difference between, creating your iteration in your evolution where you can discover something new. But even the greatest inventions, scientific inventions and leaps, almost every single one of them, somebody else was working on something similar at the same time in some other part of the world, right? I think there's actually studies of monkeys and, they discover some new technology for extracting coconut water or whatever it is, and some other monkey around the world discovered it at the same time. And that there's just somehow, there's a time where certain ideas come to fruition. And that's been proven through the course of human history, is that when an idea is ripe, when it's ready to emerge, all of the circumstances and conditions kind of help it to emerge. Now, but to think that you are, what's the word? To think that you can be fully outside of history, culture, society, you name it, I just don't think that's possible. And I feel like people could agonize over being truly original and truly unique. Now, I'm all about uniqueness and differentiation as a brander. And I try to come up with, blue ocean ideas that redefine categories. And that's one of the things that I love to do and I'm known for doing. But it's redefining a category or reinventing a category. It's not necessarily saying, it's still online education, for example. So I created a whole new kind of product, an experience called the Experience Product, instead of an information-based product. It's a new category of digital product online course, training program. We own the trademark. We've taught thousands of people how to do this. But it's still online education. I didn't go out there and invent online education. I invented a new kind of online education. But if all these other forms of online education that sucked didn't exist before, I wouldn't have come up with my innovation that made it better. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, that's so fascinating. That's so fascinating because it seems like what I believe I'm hearing is instead of trying to go recreate the wheel, build your own thing, but on top of the hard work that everybody else has already put in to give yourself
Yeah.
as big of an advantage as possible.
Yeah. I mean, the wheel was created in the Stone Ages, correct? Out of stone.
I
So
think
why
so.
go back over how many thousand years have humans been around? I don't know the answer to that.
A long time.
Yeah, say it's 100,000 years, right? Let me just say 100,000 years. Why reinvent 100,000 years of evolution and progress and technology and advancement, right? That seems a little
Yeah.
stupid. Neanderthal, even. Yes.
That's awesome. But yeah, but I think it is definitely worth the discussion though, because like that was totally one extreme. And I kind of love like bouncing the ideas and playing devil's advocate because
Totally.
I just think it's fun. Um, but on the other side, like the idea of just copying somebody else, oh man, that's just soul crushing because we do have something that is different from everybody else in the world. Like nobody's going to have the exact same thoughts as you in the exact same chronology based on the exact same experiences. There's just no way.
Well, you have to also look at originality is that certain types are able to create things that are truly original and others aren't. There's some people who are maintainers, some people are optimizers, and some people are inventors, right? So if you understand, you may not have an inventor type in you. I have an inventor type. I can create things that are pretty new, but you might be able to maintain an existing system and there's still massive value in that. Or maybe you can optimize an existing system and make it better. Now, get me into optimization mode. I'm like, shoot me now. But you need optimization. Like if you want to bring, say, make a computer go faster and bring the cost down, you need optimization, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you just understanding that there are different kinds of people and understanding, your makeup and not forcing yourself to be an innovator if you're not an innovator.
So where do you get the inspiration for your inventions?
Usually by seeing something that sucks and getting pissed off about it. Why does this suck so bad? I could do this better. Yes.
Are there any inventions that you have that you're like, this is kind of crazy. I don't know if it'll work, but like it could be the biggest thing you've ever created.
Well, there are actually a lot of those ideas. I'm going to have to, I mean, the one that really has worked and the one that I focused on is this experience product. So basically, I found out that 97% of people who sign up for online products or digital programs don't complete those programs and get results, which is shocking to me. That's a failure rate akin to the insurance industry, which is designed to fail. You know what I mean? You're designed to
Yeah.
people not wanting to cash that in.
Right.
And so at the same time, I'm noticing that in this attention economy, there's a lot of platforms and softwares and social media that people are really focusing their time and attention into. And I was starting to experiment. And then in 2016, I saw a video that kind of changed everything for me. So do you happen to know what happened in the summer of 2016?
Well, I think you saw a video that changed the way you looked at things, but
I did. And it was actually a video of grown adults double parking their car by Central Park, getting out, trying to catch little virtual creatures on their cell phones, Pokemon Go.
oh, right.
Thousands of people stampeding through Central Park. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? I mean, this is just like grown adults chasing little virtual creatures on their cell phone. But then I instantly had a thought, what if I could get people that excited to achieve their greatest goals in life and overcome their biggest challenges that they literally double parked their cars and ran towards this outcome? Is that even possible? And then I set myself that vision and I said, well, how do I go about in creating that? And I innovated a whole new kind of product that combines gamification, adult learning theory, psychology of motivation, user experience, good old fashioned curriculum design. And it gets 10 to 30 times the results, 10 to 30 times the industry standard, completion and results for students, clients, and customers. I'm constantly optimizing, iterating, and improving that. But it's really been a big innovation in the field, and a lot of some of the great product creators and online educators have come to me to learn this and sent their teams through this program. And that's an example where I saw that, but the vision also, I had already felt like the problem. I remember going up to maybe 2014, 2015, feeling really frustrated that people were buying my courses and not completing them, and going to a friend and saying, are you seeing this kind of thing too? Are you seeing people buy your programs, not complete them? And she told me something that kind of changed my life forever. It was like she said, well, Marisa, maybe some people aren't meant to succeed. And that felt like a punch in the gut, because I don't believe that. I
Yeah.
believe that anyone can be successful given the right training, given the right tools, given the right experiences, given the right, support. And
Hmm.
so that kind of set me on my path to figuring out how to make it possible for anyone to be successful, at least in the context of online education.
Hmm. So that
So,
was the
yeah,
problem, which
yes,
led you to like thinking about, oh, how do I solve this? But
yes,
it seems like that led you to even like a deeper niche problem of the I think 3% consumption rate.
yeah. Yeah,
Huh.
so that problem had me talking to people. And when she said that, that challenged me to like want to do something about the
Ah.
problem rather than just accept it. Then I started dabbling and experimenting and seeing really good results. And then I saw the Pokemon Go. And then I got even more inspired. Like, if they can do it with a stupid game, I should be able to do this, right?
That's
So,
awesome. That's an amazing journey.
yeah.
And it seems like unless you were going at this and taking this on and like really devoting yourself to solving this, all those little things that like they weren't, I mean they may have been little things at the time, but the implications are so much greater that led you on the path.
Yeah.
Wow. And you never know. You never know what one little thing will then lead to.
Yeah. So a lot of times I tell people, follow your anger and your frustration, right? Because a lot of times that will lead you to an innovation. You either follow your pleasure or you follow your pain. And humans are, I think it's 3 times or 4 times more motivated by pain than they are by pleasure. It's just biological. So your pain, your frustration, your anger will lead you to some great breakthroughs if you let it. If you see it as a challenge, as I can do something about this, rather than just accept that that's the way it is.
I think there have been a lot of people in history who that was exactly what they said
Yeah.
of this just can't like it can't end this way or it can't
Yeah.
be this way. I'm Jewish and I live in New Orleans.
In
And
New
after
Orleans?
mhm.
I moved to New Orleans in my 8th grade, so it changed my life. I was there all the way through high school. Went to, yeah, New Orleans Center for Creative Arts and Ben Franklin High School and McMain Magnet School, and yes,
No way. That's
yeah.
amazing. That's amazing. Well, what I was going to say was, and you actually may have come across it, but my synagogue's Beth Israel. And at first we were on Canal, um,
It's
right
not the
by,
one on it's the Garden District, St. Charles. Is it that one?
no, but I know that one. I have a lot of friends there. I feel like, you know, Jews, we know all the other Jews in the city, but this one was, it was in Lakeview. And it was like Canal and it's like close to the corner of Canal and Robert E. Lee, and it got destroyed in the hurricane because the 17th Street Canal toppled on the Lakeview side, and when we came back to the city, I say we, my family, because I'm fifth generation at my show, and my ancestors started it, and when we came back for the high holidays, which are actually coming up around this time, it was Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which are two of the holiest of holidays, actually the holiest, and we had to do them in in a hotel, in the ballroom of a hotel. And we had to go, and there's like a machitza, so you separate the men and women. And so we had to go get like these buckets and pour concrete and put in like a, anyways, my bubby, my grandma on my dad's side, she was the first woman president of the show, by the way. And so very proud of her for that. But she had this speech that she gave. And what she said was, we all know what's happened here. But the fact that it looks like the show's going into a place of destruction because we don't know where our members are, everything was destroyed. We have an opportunity here. We have a chance to change the trajectory of our synagogue, of this community, of our people forever. And I, for one, am not going to let it go down this way. And because of that, she was able to save the show. And it was just that what you were saying reminded me of that. It's just so many incredible people I can only imagine have said that too, of just one decision of, I'm just not going to let it end this way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good for us to stand up for what we believe in and do something about it and not expect everybody else to do something. So what's the thing that you want to do something about?
Is that like a rhetorical question to the audience?
Yes, it is. You
That's
called
awesome.
me.
Well, hey, everybody, definitely when you answer that question, tag us on social media with your answer. What are all your social media handles so people can tag
At
you?
Live Your Message, basically.
Awesome. Yeah. So everybody, please tag at Live Your Message on all the channels. It'll be awesome. So Marisa, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'm deeply appreciative of your time, and the conversation's been very meaningful for me, and I want to respect your time. So I just have one more question for you, then we'll go ahead and wrap it up.
Sure.
But I want to know, from the perspective of a 24-year-old, what question should I be asking you that I just wouldn't think to ask?
One of the things that I like to say, it's less of a question than more of an inspiration, is, it's a quote by the late, great Zig Ziglar, which is, you can have everything you want in life if you'll just help enough other people get what they want. And I think so many people go into business, go into product creation, go into marketing from the perspective of what they want to create, what they want to offer, what they want to do, what they want to sell. And I really encourage you to look at it from the perspective of how you can serve, how you can help people get results, what you can let them do, be, feel, have, overcome, or achieve through saying yes to you and your work. And I think when you do, that does a couple things. One is you're speaking to your audience, their needs, their pains, their desires. Two, it allows your work to be so much bigger than your fears and your doubts, because it's not about you anymore. It's about how you can serve. And I would really just recommend that you think about your business that way, whatever it is that you want to do that way, as basically, how can you help people get what they want in life? Not what you think they should want, but what they actually, truly, deeply want.
What is it that people truly, deeply want?
Your audience. It's going to be different for different people. It's not one thing. It's like you finding the thing that your audience wants and is willing to pay for, where it's a disproportionate amount of value. What you're asking them to do and spend and invest in terms of time, money, and energy is so much smaller than the end result that they're going to get.
You don't think that all people have like a one core desire, one need, or one purpose, like beneath all of our individual uniqueness, like as a species, we don't have like one common craving?
Well, there's about 20 common cravings that we have. And if you look at the diversity of business and industry and entrepreneurship, there's definitely lots of needs and gradations of needs. You always want to understand the deepest need, but you also want to understand the surface need, the problem you can immediately solve.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again so much, Marisa. I'm very, very grateful for your time, and I just want to say thank you very, very much.
Great. And can I let people know how to get the resource that kind of what I was talking about, my viral product checklist, which is how you create your very own experience product that gets people hooked on buying, taking action, getting results through your products, because I'd love to share that resource with them.
Sure. Yeah. And I'll
Yeah.
also put it in the show notes, description, all that good stuff down below.
Great. So if you go to liveyourmessage.com/project egg, all in one word, you're going to find my viral product checklist, which is how you can get more sales and better results for your customers. So they basically get hooked on you and your programs, referring for you, buying from you over and over again, and how you can avoid that horrific 97% failure rate that the vast majority of people are seeing with their products, programs, and services that has your business decline over time. So if you really want to, create any kind of online program, digital product, course, even applying this to one-on-one coaching, consulting, or services, then highly recommend you go to liveyourmessage.com/project egg and grab your copy of my viral product checklist.
Well, thank you very much, Marisa, and to everybody watching and listening. I want to thank y'all very, very much. I'm very grateful that y'all choose to share your time with us today, because it is very valuable too. And I love y'all, so I'm glad y'all chose to hang out. So thank you very much. Thank you, Marisa. Thank you to everybody who's watching and listening, and I will see all of you on the next episode.